yeah. So I started from nothing. The people in your circle will just get to the bluffing. Yeah, they always switch sides, so I can't do the loving. No, I can't do the loving. So they always switch sides, so I can't do the loving. You know, do the dash now, ayy. So I started from nothing. I got money on my mind and I know that it's coming. I know people switch sides, so I can't do the loving. When you down, they won't ride, everybody just bluffing. Now they hitting on my line, cause they see how I'm coming. And I'm finally doing fine, I've been counting these hundreds. And my baby gon' ride, she is not with the front. So I put in overtime, but look what I'm becoming. You can look me in my eyes, don't believe all the judging. So I do this for my people, we the best, you know. I got lots of problems, I'm just stressed, you know. I'm just praying for the days, I'm counting decimals. I've been riding with my brothers, for the rest they hoes. I'm knowing I'ma make it, I just gotta be patient. I come from nothing, now I'm about to make a statement. Bitches probably want me, but they can't even face it. Ayy, no, they can't even face it. So my brothers about to make it out the basement. If she for me, then she know there's no replacement. I been outside, she see that I'm dripping, little baby know that I'm fly. No love for my city, who thought I'd make it this high? I know that y'all fake and the real in disguise. I've been through the most, I'm holding all this pain inside. These bitches would dump me, now I don't really gotta try. I'm stuck in all my habits, but I gotta have it. Spend a couple bands on a jacket. All this money on me, I keep stacking. Why do y'all acting? Why do y'all capping? Can't really say much, but I'm back up on my bullshit. We don't got it from my brothers, they with the movement. Keep your shit blunt, you cross it, someone get ruthless. I don't got time for no drama, that shit is useless. Got no time for no bullshit, no time for a bitch. If you keep it real, best believe I never switch on you. All the money in the world, I won't switch on you. I can get you all the pearls, diamonds glitz on you. If I got the whole world, I be missing you. I could drip you on our money and Givenchy too. Got the labels always calling cause we making moves. I ain't stopping till I got it and I swear that shit true. So my brothers better make it out the basement. If she for me, then she know there's no replacement. I been outside, she see that I'm dripping, little baby know that I'm fly. No love for my city, who thought I'd make it this high? I know that y'all fake and the real in disguise. I've been through the most, I'm holding all this pain inside. These bitches would dump me, now I don't really gotta try. They gon' hit you when you down and I swear that shit true. They gon' hit you when you down and I swear that shit true. They gon' hit you when you down, but we still making moves. Yeah, yeah. You know the dash now, ayy.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Brian Mansell Show. As always, I am your host, Brian Mansell, and today we got a lot to talk about. And that is not an understatement. We have a lot to actually talk about. I mean, there was a lot that happened this weekend. A lot of it good, some of it bad. I mean, we do have to talk about one specific thing that's kind of sad. I'm sure you guys can see in the row with today's topics here on the side. It's not too pleasant, but we have to cover it because it's very important. So again, quick run through for today's topics. Week 4 in the NFL. Some really big upsets yesterday that kind of shook up the way that we see the NFL moving forward and the standings itself. I mean, we already saw how big the Lions-Packers game was on Thursday night. Yesterday was no different. It was still a really contested games. I mean, we saw some things where we thought it was going to be really close, and it went the opposite way. One example, that Titans game. Definitely going to talk about that. Titans-Bengals. What a game that was. If you guys didn't see any of the scores of the games down here, you could see them down below on the ticker. You have them listed out of all the results of the NFL games. We're going to talk about Jrue Holiday, the former Milwaukee Buck. We've talked about it on Friday about places that Jrue Holiday could go since Portland wasn't going to keep him. Turns out he's going to Boston, to the Celtics, the rival of the team he was previously on. We're going to talk about that, see how it impacts the Celtics and how it helps the Blazers more than it actually helps the Celtics. MLB season's officially over the weekend. It finally came to an end. We talked about it on Friday. Some of the possible outcomes that could happen ended up happening. Especially the Padres, who we said had no chance. Yeah, they were gone on Friday night. They were eliminated by that point. So, yeah. I mean, you're going to see it happen. It's pretty obvious. The good news is we got the final seeding and matchups all lined up. Action starts tomorrow night, so be ready for that. We'll go through everything. We'll talk about the matchups, what it means for each team. If you guys didn't see the Postseason Outlook show on MLB Network, don't worry. I'm going to cover you guys on that and show you guys what the important stuff is to know for the postseason, as well as my World Series prediction. You'll have it physically in video form, so you can keep the receipts when I'm wrong. Tim Wakefield, unfortunately, did pass away yesterday after a long battle with brain cancer. Very tragic story. Red Sox legend, Colts icon. I've been taking a day to think about it and really sit on it. And we're going to talk about it later during the MLB segment. Updated college football rankings. We're going to go through whatever the new release was from yesterday and see if the committee got it right. Did they get it right? Because I think Georgia being number 1 may not be right. And you'll hear why. Like I said, this show always touches on every sport. So we're going to touch on the WNBA as well. The Liberty and the Aces. New York, Las Vegas facing off in the finals. The super team, the New York Liberty, up against the defending champion, Las Vegas Aces. This is the matchup we've been waiting for. Said it all off season that this was going to be the finals matchup, and it ended up being the finals matchup. So we're going to see how it goes, but we're going to absolutely go through a preview of it, see what it's going to look like for each team, possible outcomes that can come from it. And we're going to close out the show with a Seahawks-Giants breakdown. Now, the reason why we're doing one specific game is because tonight I will be streaming the Monday Night Football game live here on Twitch for you guys to see. It's going to be a hell of a stream. Going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait for you guys to tune in and watch that. But before we get into that, we need to be able to talk about and get the best gauge of what works. So honestly, if you're looking to bet, you might want to see what we could do with the Seahawks-Giants. I may not be the best when it comes to money lines and spreads, but I'm very good when it comes to player props. That I've gotten good at. Right now, also, if you're a bettor and you're using DraftKings, FanDuel, Caesars, whatever, BetMGM, 365 bets, I don't know what you guys use, Prize Picks, whatever. Whatever picks you guys use, just know, player props are the biggest thing right now. Last year, we all thought it was something else. We thought there was going to be a big advantage with alternate spreads, and it ended up not being the case. Usually the lines are better for those things, and they haven't been good. Same thing for anytime touchdowns. Anytime touchdowns have usually been a big positive over the years. This year, they're really lowballing it, and they're really valuing it a lot less. So, like, if you go in and you go to bet for Raiders game and you go for Josh Jacobs is at a minus now. Last season, he would have been like a plus 110. Now he's at like a minus 180. They got on top of it, and they've resolved that. Now the new answer is to go for alternate yardage, alternate passing props, alternate rushing, alternate receiving. That is where the biggest success is. So, we'll go through the Seahawks-Giants, see what it looks like in terms of a winner. I'll give a rough guesstimate on a spread, and then I'll give you guys some great player props to entertain. But again, as a reminder, when you bet, please gamble responsibly. If you're 21 years over, if you're under that age, please do not gamble. Just wait till you hit 21 and be smart. Okay? Be smart with your gambling. But that's what the topics are all going to look like for today. So before we get started, how are we all doing? I want to hear from you guys. How's everything going today on this beautiful Monday morning? And with that, we're going to also bring this up. We're going to do a call-in. So what I'm going to do early on here in the stream is I'm going to put in a call-in link. So we're going to try at any point. If you're a viewer of the show, you want to watch the program, you want to watch the podcast, I'm going to put in a call-in link so you can go into the link. I can bring you on as a guest and we can talk sports. Again, likely I'm going to bring you on towards the end of a tail-end segment when I open up for discussions. If you guys are waiting in the waiting room, because I have a backstage room for this, I'll bring you guys in towards the end of the segment. If you call in and you get put into the room, that's what's going to happen. So you're going to have to wait till the tail end of every segment in order to talk about whatever you want to talk about. And it doesn't have to be related to that topic. It doesn't have to be about the NFL if we're doing an NFL topic. It doesn't have to be about the MLB if we're on the MLB segment. So whatever it is, I'll answer it. I got any questions, I'm fully open. I'll give you guys whatever answers you need. That's what I'm here for. But again, with that, we're going to get started with the show. So let's start out with some week 4 stuff in the NFL. Because, yeah, a lot did happen. A lot definitely happened yesterday, and it needs to be discussed. So we're going to talk about it real quick. But before we start here, let's ask a good question here. What do we think about the Bills? Do we think the Bills are for real? I know it sounds like a stupid question, but I have my reasons. Because they started out really poorly in week 1, but since then, they have been on a revenge tour to remember. They have been crushing teams left and right ever since that heartbreaking OT loss to the Jets. They've really kicked it into high gear. So, I personally think that the Bills are for real. And I said it from before the season began, the Bills are probably going to be a team to watch. They had the best chance to come out of the AFC. The best chance. And the AFC doesn't look too strong in my opinion. I don't think it looks overpowering. I think the Chiefs are underwhelming this year. I think the Bills are probably the strongest of the group. The Miami is still a good team, but they've played competition that plays down to its opponent. And that's a big issue. So, I'm completely on the board of it's Buffalo or Kansas City. I love the Jaguars, but it's not going to be the Jaguars. I like the Ravens. The Ravens aren't going to the Super Bowl. But the Bills and the Chiefs are the two teams, again, that look like they're going to lead the way. I still got the Bills in first here. Let's go through some of the games first. First off, let's talk about a quick review. We're going to go through each game, quick takeaways from each one. Let's start with the Buccaneers and the Saints. My hometown Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the New Orleans Saints. Coming to this game, I had the Saints coming in with a win only because they're in New Orleans and Derek Carr was going to play through the AC joint sprain. Boy, was I wrong. Tampa Bay made me eat my words faster than I think they ever did for me. 26-9 was the final score. A little rough in the beginning for both teams, but Derek Carr really couldn't air that ball out that well. It was really noticeable he wasn't playing well. They were trying to keep him doing short checkdowns, not to overwork his shoulder, and ended up paying the price for them because by not having the downfield action, it took away from their game. Mayfield was able to open up the offense, going for 240-plus yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick only, but that's 2 picks on the season for him. Total. He's been very good at limiting turnovers. He's been very good at that. And that's been very helpful for Tampa Bay's success offensively. Not a great day for Rachaad White. 15 carries, 56 yards. Good production value, but not in the sense of fantasy. Like if you're a fantasy player, you know for a fact that stat line's decent in terms of production, but not for the actual results it brought out. And the leading receiver was Chris Godwin with over 110 yards receiving, mostly due to the fact that Mike Evans did have to come out of the game with a hamstring injury, something to monitor for Tampa Bay moving forward. But with this win, Tampa Bay is now 3-1 on the season and lead the NFC South with no ties. They are currently alone, sitting at the top of the South. The Saints fall to 2-2. Falcons, Jaguars in London. London's calling, people. And they're saying, please don't bring back the Toy Story broadcast. I hated it. I'm not going to lie to you. And it wasn't because it was not creative. I love the idea of making it so kids enjoy the game. It's beautiful. I loved it when they did it with Nickelodeon. I liked it when what they were doing here, what the concept was. My issue was they got to perfect that motion capture technology because it was glitching like a machine yesterday. I hated it. It was pretty bad. I mean, it led to some great memeable moments, but it just was not... I couldn't enjoy it myself as a viewer. So I had to watch the actual game itself. But I did see clips. It was pretty funny. Jaguars, as expected, won this game 23-7. The Falcons looked like a shell of themselves, but at least Bijan got 105 yards on the ground on 14 carries. Ridiculous numbers, by the way. But I am concerned that there's turmoil right now in Atlanta because obviously somebody was pissed off at Desmond Ridder not playing very well. And I'm a little confused because I didn't think Ridder was horrifically terrible. I thought he was halfway decent, and that was apparently a problem. So me thinking a guy's halfway decent is me saying I support a guy who plays subpar competition. And the truth is, he's good, don't get me wrong. I just don't think he is that guy who can carry an offense. You know what I mean? I think he's not the answer for Atlanta. Atlanta could do so much better. They are definitely going to be in the QB market during this offseason. But he did show some good signs to be a starter. There was nothing against that. I mean, if we call it what it is here, this is the beginning of a good thing for Atlanta. They're on the right track. There's no disagreeing here. Ooh, I don't know what happened there. I'm going to say that I do believe... Actually, you know what? Let me correct that while we're talking here. I think the Jaguars are a very good team. I don't think they're a winning team in terms of like they're going to the Super Bowl. But they are a playoff team. They proved it against Atlanta. Their defense did their job. And that's all I could say. They really did what they had to do. What I'm trying to figure out is why we lost the YouTube window. We had a window that we can pull up clips. And apparently it did not have the clip. So I'm trying to figure out what happened. Again, my apologies on that. It wasn't supposed to be that way. And there you go. Now we got it. I was looking for the highlights. I had highlights ready to go to talk about this. And apparently it was not there. Now I have to put it back behind wherever I am. So I'm sorry. OBS can be very confusing sometimes. There we go. Perfect. So, again, Jaguars. Good game. Defensively did their job. Offensively, I think they could have been a touch better. I think there were some missed opportunities that could have made this more of a blowout. But again, Atlanta did have a decent showing. So did the Jaguars. I'm upset for the Atlanta not playing better. But you know what? This is what happens. You're going to have these moments where your quarterback is trying his best and he just doesn't look great. They got to him all day. His offensive line didn't help him. Receivers were mad at him. It's going to happen. You got to take these with stride and take it as a learning moment. And that's all you can do. So for Atlanta, they got some things to work on. But it's not a problem. They will figure this thing out eventually. So another game I want to talk about Denver and Chicago, also known as the Tank Bowl to some. Thank you, Urinating Tree on YouTube, for that concept. The Tank Bowl. Who's the worst team in football? Denver at 0-3 and Chicago at 0-3. They need to get their first win of the season. Whose win is more important, Denver or Chicago? That is the million-dollar question. Well, it looks like it was more important to Denver because Denver was actually losing this game big time. At one point, they were losing, I believe, 21-7 by halftime. And they ended up actually winning the game out of nowhere and beating the Bears 31-28, despite the fact that Justin Fields actually had a very good day. His probably best game of his career. 335 yards in the air, 4 touchdowns and an interception, just one though. DJ Moore finally felt what it was like to be a wide receiver 1 when a quarterback was actually throwing to you. 8 receptions for 131 yards and a touchdown. And Khalil Herbert also great game on the ground with 103 yards. Unfortunately, for the Broncos, they got the win. And they didn't look phenomenal on the field defensively. As, again, you know your defense is bad when you're letting the Bears score 28 points and making Justin Fields look like he was worth a first-round pick. So, yeah, I guess the Bears are tanking. And if that's the case, go ahead. Fully commit. If they're 0-6 or 0-8, I would totally consider making trades and getting rid of guys. My biggest trade target, I should say, get rid of Fields. Fields is the young guy. Maybe he's just in a bad system in Chicago. Send him to a team that could use a young QB. I already told you guys there's going to be a huge QB shuffle coming when this is all said and done. Be prepared for that. Be prepared. The next game we're going to talk about is probably the Ravens and the Browns. The Ravens and the Browns was an interesting game because I don't think people expected Deshaun Watson to be a scratch. And then Dorian Thompson-Robinson got the start. And to say DTR struggled might be an understatement. Because DTR, oh boy. He wasn't bad. I'll say this. He wasn't terrible, but we saw why he wasn't a top pick in the draft as a quarterback. We saw why. He's a great talent, do not get me wrong. I just think there's some things the guy has to work on. And again, he wasn't planning on being the starter. That wasn't the intention. I'm sorry about this. The intention wasn't for him to become the starter. The intention was, you got to fill in for this guy. You looked great in the preseason. We got rid of the original backup we had for you to be the backup. You have to prove you're the number 2 guy. And as you can see by the highlights here, he wasn't really doing that. But again, it is his first start. You got to give the rookie the credit. He went out there, did his best. But the Ravens definitely held on and made this a not so close competition. In this one, the Baltimore Ravens ended up finishing this 28-3. It wasn't even close. But yeah, things happen. You can't control it. My big takeaway from this is I guess Cleveland is taking Deshaun Watson for granted. Great quarterback play he's had. Despite the fact the stats don't say it, he's been fairly smart with the football. So I can't hate the guy. He's been great for what they needed. Now, Cleveland is in a tight situation. They're very lucky that Pittsburgh has got no offense because Matt Canada needs to be shot into the sun. And they definitely can take the credit that they don't have to worry about Cincinnati. Because Joe Burrow looks like an absolute shell of himself right now. The worst thing Cincinnati did was rush him back. But this is going to bring me into a different game for another team that has not performed to expectations. The Minnesota Vikings were in another game you could classify as a tank bowl, but it really wasn't based off like the categories of where the teams were at. Minnesota 0-3 versus the Panthers at 0-3. You got to ask yourself sometimes, why do we do the things that we do? Why does Kirk Cousins decide to make every Vikings fan's life difficult? For example, you're seeing it on the screen here that he was not doing well really early. The Panthers had his number in the beginning of the game. But also at the same time, we have to remember it's Kirk Cousins. Things change. Things can get better. He's still a decent quarterback, even though he didn't look good yesterday. You're going to have a bad game. But unfortunately, his 3 good games he's had this year all resulted in losses. So this game that he doesn't do great in somehow results in a victory, people. The Vikings actually ended up winning this game in a comeback. And the final score of that one, well, the Vikings at least kept it close. They were being very nice to the Panthers and decided to let them stay a little bit close. Didn't decide to turn around and just completely unload on them. That one ended 21-13 in favor of the Vikings for their first win of the year. Bryce Young was somehow the better passer with 204 yards. He had no touchdowns, by the way. Passing touchdowns. None. Jefferson, quiet fairly with 85 yards and 2 touchdowns on 6 receptions. And the best carrier of the day, Alexander Madison, who woke up from a deep slumber to actually start rushing for good yards. So yeah, Vikings 1-3 finally, and the Panthers moved to 0-4. Again, some people didn't expect it. I kind of saw it coming. Not going to lie to you. Let's keep moving here with this NFL topic and go to the next game, which is going to be the Bengals and the Titans, which I told you guys we were going to have to cover at some point. I didn't think it was going to be now, but we have to do it. Yeah, Joe Burrow should have been rested. They were not in the place to compete. He wasn't healthy enough to do his job, and they rushed him out anyway. I got an issue with that. If you want to be successful, why would you rush your QB out rather than invest in him being healthy? Because if the guy is healthy, they could win football games. This is a game where if you rest your quarterback and you let the backup do the job, maybe it's a closer game. Again, I can't speak for whatever happened in Cleveland, but for Cincinnati, this team right here, the Tennessee Titans, they're not a playoff team. They're not a great team. I've said this from the beginning. This is not a team who goes to the postseason as King Henry makes a big run. This is not a team that goes to the postseason and wins the division and everything and makes a run. This is a team who sits as a sleeper that tries to upset people. And that's exactly what they did. They came in and they dominated. They dominated the Cincy in Tennessee. It's unbelievable what they did. I think the spread on that game was -2 in favor of Tennessee, and Tennessee won that one outright. That one wasn't even close. It was over before it even started. That's how close that... If I'm correct, that final score was about 28-3. I think 28-3 was the final score of that one, and it just... The Bengals had nothing. Sorry, 27-3 in that one. Ryan Tannehill, 240, a TD and an interception. Henry with 122 yards and a touchdown. Jamar Chase, the leading receiver, with 73 yards. And he was definitely upset in the locker room, and he did make a statement. I'm not going to share that video because he did say some things, but he basically said, I'm open. I'm always open. But Joe Burrow just doesn't get him the ball. That last part is me saying that, not what Jamar said. He's just not getting him the ball. And that's a shame. Because he's wide receiver 1, and he's not getting treated like one. Rams and Colts, another one that gave me a heart attack. I'm trying to watch it. The Rams and Colts somehow went to overtime. For those who did not watch the game, and I had to sit through it, the Rams were up at one point 23-0 on the Colts in the third quarter. The Colts came back and forced overtime. In one half of football, they came back and they tied it at 23. But in the end, the Rams ended up winning it in overtime, 29-23. The big story in this game, Puka Nacua, the rookie receiver from BYU. 9 receptions, 163 yards, and a touchdown. He is breaking records left and right. And I'm talking like the most receiving yards through a player's first 4 games and 5 games already. He has been a machine for the Rams. His fill-in for Cooper Kupp has been saving the team from being worse. The Rams are now 2-2, and the Colts are 2-2. And speaking for the other teams that I didn't touch on, the Ravens are 3-1, the Browns are 2-2, the Broncos are 1-3, the Bears are 0-4. The Rams are 2-2 now, the Colts are also 2-2, and the Bengals Titans are 2-2, and the Bengals are 1-3. Titans somehow still undefeated at home. 2-0 at home, 0-2 on the road. Maybe home field advantage is big for them this year. But yes, the Rams game came down to how well was Nacua going to be able to carry this receiving offense. and the receiving group, because that's really what he did. And he proved he could definitely do it. So Rams, 29-23. Eagles also went to overtime. Eagles did win this one, but it was a very close game. They choked it away just to barely squeeze it out in overtime. An ugly, ugly win for Philly, but it's a win, and they remain undefeated. At 4-0, Jalen Hurts 319, 2 TDs. A.J. Brown having a field day with 175 and 2 touchdowns. And the Commanders had a decent day. Decent day. I can't complain about Sam Howell. He's been fairly good through the first 4 games of the year. He's doing the job correctly. It's just unfortunate that he had to run in with Philly so quickly. Commanders, 2-2. Steelers and Texans. This one I was very, very wrong about. I was very wrong about this game. Steelers and Texans. The Texans blew the doors off the Steelers. I don't know what the hell Matt Canada is thinking sometimes. You know, sometimes you run into a person that you can't just put your finger on, like, why are they so bad? Why are the play calls not working? And then you meet Matt Canada. And you see clearly why. The man called such a terrible play on a 4th down that Kenny Pickett got hurt. He hurt the starting quarterback by a play call. The fact that he has not been fired yet from an NFL position as an offensive coordinator, where now you have media personalities, and I hate doing this because this is why it's a big deal. It's one thing to say that media analysts and personalities can rag on the guy, because that's what they're going to do. It's what they're paid to do. They rag on a guy. They support a guy if he's doing good. They rag on a guy if he's doing bad. It's what they do. But when media reporters are ragging on the guy, that's different. And I'm talking when you're seeing like people who work for NFL Network as reporters saying that they're bad, that's bad. Because you are taught as a reporter, you do not rip on a coach. You don't rip on a player. You don't do any of that to insult them, because you don't need a lawsuit or anything bad against them or anything bad happening. That's the truth. And instead, what happens? They all turned around on Canada big time, and he looked, and they let him hear that he was bad. The Texans, though, they got something with C.J. Stroud. I will say that. C.J. Stroud looks like an absolutely amazing quarterback. He might be the first Ohio State QB to be the first, I would say the first successful Ohio State QB in the NFL's history. He's just that good. He's made some great throws. It was on display in this game against Pittsburgh. You keep watching. They got a great ground game going with Dameon Pierce. Big takeaway from this is the Texans are a dangerous team. They're really dangerous. When you watch them play and you see the poise that C.J. Stroud gets while being one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL, it's mesmerizing. And I'm just saying this ahead of time because I might be getting ahead of myself. I feel like I should take credit in this. When I do the draft process and I look through prospects, I analyze quarterbacks and tight ends very closely, because those are the two positions I worry about the most. The tight end needs to be a good blocker and a good vertical threat. The quarterback has to fit all the tangibles to be a franchise quarterback in the right system. For some reason, C.J. Stroud continuously popped off the page for me on everything. And you're seeing it right now with Houston. To me, he was the best QB in this past draft. He was the best QB drafted. I know we like Richardson, and I know people were high on Bryce Young. But I said Stroud was the best quarterback in this draft, and through these first 4 weeks, he has played like the best one. And his QB play is the reason that they're 2-2, as you see in completion. But still, he has been phenomenal through all of this, and I can do nothing but be happy for the way that that's gone. But you're seeing the play calling as well, as you just saw there, with Pittsburgh, a sneak peek into why they are so bad. Their defense can only do so much. You can't rely on the offense to do. You got to rely on your offense to do things. And when they give you the ball and they give you the opportunity, you have to capitalize on the opportunity. They weren't capitalizing on opportunities. And they weren't doing their job. And that's why Houston was able to wear down the Pittsburgh defense and win the game 30-6. 30-6 on the Pittsburgh Steelers from the Houston Texans. I don't know what's going on with Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin's got to figure something out. Somebody's heads are going to start spinning, and they need to figure out what is the poison in the locker room and get rid of the poison. And you can't blame it on Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell this time. Find the poison. And that's my thought on that with Pittsburgh. I didn't want to talk about it. The Raiders and the Chargers. Aiden O'Connell, AOC, got his first start yesterday. The rookie from Purdue for Las Vegas. He had a very good chance to make a big statement win against the Chargers. But on 1st and goal, in the 2-minute crunch time, he threw a bad pick and a bad interception in the end zone. And that cost them the game. But what I saw for the Raiders is that they are not an offensively bad team. They are actually very good. Not like a top 10 offense good, but they are a good offense. I'm not mad at it. They've hit the league averages at least. But their run game stands out the most. I love their run game. They've done very well up to this point. Josh Jacobs, he had 8 receptions yesterday for 81 yards. So they've converted him into a dual threat back, and he's been very good at that and doing that. They didn't want to overwork O'Connell. They made him become the check down back as a check down option. He made the most of it. And he really kept them in this game, was helping them get the chunk yardage they needed. But what makes me put up the red sirens and alarms is with the Chargers. You played a rookie quarterback who wasn't drafted in the top round or second round. You played a guy who got drafted in like the 4th, 5th round. So, what's going on? What's going on, Staley? What's going on? This is not you. Oh wait, no, I'm wrong. It is you because you do choke games. This is your thing. If he doesn't pick that ball and it's caught for a touchdown, Chargers fans are for your head. And they want blood. So you should be very grateful that you did not lose the game. That your DB bailed you out. So the Chargers end up winning this one 24-17. Aiden O'Connell, decent day, despite having 1 interception and no touchdowns thrown. Patriots-Cowboys, I feel like we can just skip over this one because it's kind of obvious. The Cowboys blew them out in Dallas, 38-3. Not much else to say. Offensively, it wasn't a great game for Dallas. Wasn't their best. But defensively, they were all over the field. And I don't know how much of that you can attribute to how bad the Patriots were. But I like the defense for the Cowboys. I can't say it enough. They are a very good defense. Even without Trayvon Diggs, they've been very good. But I'll say this. New England, enjoy this year. I feel like this is going to be Bill Belichick's last season. I can't say otherwise. Bill has been... Since Brady has left, his record is still under 500. Since Brady has left New England. They're not a good football team. They haven't been good without him. And it's going to continue to be that way with Bill as head coach. You can only be so good with your coach. You have great talent there. But I just don't see New England doing anything with Bill now. I hate to say it, but he may go after the season. And it's not going to be like they're going to fire him. I'm not saying they're going to fire him. It may come down to a point where they can't fire him, but they're going to have to, maybe get him to retire. If Bill Belichick is ready to retire, then he can retire. That's how it is. I'm sorry. It's the truth. I think you can't continue seeing negative production from New England and expect him to keep his job. I don't care if he's a Hall of Fame coach. He's going to the Hall of Fame, but it's just not going to change things. It's the truth. Now, Cardinals 49ers is another game that I'm going to jump to here. Kind of knew that the 49ers were going to win this one 35-16. It was kind of obvious. But what I don't like is that the Cardinals, I'd say the Cardinals put up a good fight. I'll say they put up a good fight. I'll be nice. They put up a good fight. You can't be critical of the Cardinals because they're just not a good team. They weren't supposed to be a good team. And they're playing as if they're not a good team. It's fine. But the Niners, 4-0, played really well. 35 points put on their head. Big win. Big story. McCaffrey might be the MVP this year. He might be the first running back to win the MVP since Adrian Peterson. He is just playing that good. 106 yards on 20 carries and 3 touchdowns. And that's not even going into the receptions either. Brandon Ayuk, leading receiver, yesterday with 148 yards in the air. Brock Purdy, didn't have to do much. 1 throwing touchdown, 283 yards in the air. Great day. Consistency. Take the win. Enjoy it. 49ers are 4-0. As for the Patriots, by the way, they are 1-3, and the Cowboys are now 3-1 and undefeated at home. And lastly, the Chiefs and the Jets. Let's talk about the big takeaway in this one. Somehow Zach Wilson looked good. That definitely needs to be studied. I got a lot of questions about it, but Zach Wilson did look half decent. 245 yards, 2 touchdowns. His pocket presence looked much better. I like the way he commanded the game better. I did not like what happened in the fourth quarter. I think they lost steam and they couldn't keep up, and that resulted in why they went downhill so quickly. But also, you had to know this was coming because the Chiefs... Now, in terms of the holding calls I heard about, yeah, I rewatched the game over a couple times, and I can outright say I don't think that the Jets were necessarily the only ones cheated. Because I think there were incidents where the Jets they just didn't, how do I put it? I just don't think the Jets were the only team that got screwed by penalties. I think Chiefs had some bad ones too. The Jets got away with a couple calls. That horse collar one that they got was bullshit. That's another bad one I saw. When I'm watching a guy tackle somebody like this, that isn't a horse collar. Horse collars from here or from here. The back or from the back shoulder area. Not from here. This isn't a horse collar tackle. It looks like it because of the way he was thrown down, which was sharpened down. But that's not a horse collar. That's a regular tackle. And it was a bad penalty that gave them an extra 15 yards. So that's the bad news. So don't worry, Jets fans. You weren't the only ones that got the short end of the stick. I'd say the Chiefs did too. So let's not jump the gun here and act all negative, because I do think that there was some good positives to come out of this game, even though it may not seem like it. Again, Chiefs did win this thing 23-20, but the main complaints were holding calls. There were some bad holdings that went uncalled. Right there, you see it on the bottom? Donovan Smith holding sighting. If you're a Buccaneers fan, you know what that looks like. But there was no holding call thrown. They actually called it on Sauce Gardner on the defense. And they got away with a lot. The problem is, there's your interception, and that's where they called the holding. That brought back the interception. That would have put the Jets right back in the game. And Patrick Mahomes is pointing, and they blamed it on Sauce Gardner. I don't know if they're going to show the replay on this, but it wasn't a holding. Yeah, they're going to show it. They're showing Jermaine Johnson. It wasn't Jermaine Johnson. It was right here. Watch. They said it was a holding on Gardner back there, and they threw it on Sauce. And it was a very bad call. But the reason why the Jets fans complained is because this was in crunch time, and when the other penalty happened for the Chiefs, that wasn't. And I get it. I totally get the sentiment. But at the same time, you had the chance to win. You had multiple occasions to take the lead on offense. You didn't do so. You see teams all the time complain that they didn't get the penalty. The penalties cost them the game. Well, guess what? I'm tired of the excuse. And as a coach, as fans, you're going to be mad. I fully understand it. You're going to be mad that you didn't get the call. But to also sit there and say, you know what? That's why we lost. It's not because our offense completely disappeared in the fourth quarter. It's not because our defense couldn't play safer, I would say, less risky. It was because they couldn't play smarter. It's not because the defensive play calling couldn't have been changed to throw off Mahomes. It wasn't because you couldn't get to him. It's because of the penalties, right? Yeah. Yeah, I'm tired of that excuse. Coaches will tell you, just because there's bad penalties doesn't mean that that's the reason you lost. You can't blame losing on the fact that the officiating didn't go your way. Because guess what? Let's tell you the old timeless tale of one specific saying. Shit happens. Things happen. Unfortunately, Jets lost this one. I know it's sad, but the Jets did end up... the Jets did somehow... how do I put this? They did look really good. I think, obviously, they're still not a playoff team, but a lot of promise in Zach Wilson was shown, and I'm very happy for him. And I'm hoping he can maintain that and keep it going. We'll see what happens. But for now, the Jets have to regroup, get ready. You're 1-3. The Chiefs are now 3-1. The Jets looking good. The Chiefs, why was it close? That's all I have to say to the Chiefs. Why was it close? The Jets' next game is in Denver. So if you want Zach Wilson to get his first win of the season, where it's like actually a full game where he's prepared and ready to start, you would need to do it next week. But I'm not counting the Bills because he wasn't supposed to be prepared for that. He wasn't prepared to come in and start. It was just something that happened, and Buffalo wasn't prepared either. So that's why second time around, Buffalo will destroy them. But again, the Jets are still trying to work things out. I'm sure Saleh's very happy with Zach Wilson. He said if Zach keeps playing like that, they're going to win a lot more games. So that's a good thing. But I don't think it's enough to, get back to playoff contention, but they are still a decent football team. They showed that last night. We just need consistency in that. If there's consistency shown, things get better. And that's when maybe the projection will be just missing the wild card again, just like last year. So, again, a lot of positives, things to look forward to. But that is the NFL section. So that's the review for Week 4 in the NFL. A lot of good things came out of it, a lot of bad things. A lot of clarity, I would say, is what you saw. A lot of clarity. So that's Week 4 in the NFL. So if anybody's got any questions, I'm going to put the link in the chat now. So you guys will be able to comment or try to call into the show at any point. Okay, the calls are about to be opened up. At any point, you guys are able to come in here. This is all you got to do. That is it. So here comes the link now, right into the chat. Posted. If you guys are interested in calling into the show to talk a little bit about this, we do have a guest section, so I'll highlight it real quick. This is the guest section. You guys can come in here. If you guys are in this option here, you guys will pop up on the screen, and you will be able to sit here and have a conversation. You don't have to be on the camera. You can technically disable your camera. I'm okay with that. You just got to be able to use audio. It's just audio that I need from you. That's it. So that's just a preview of what it looks like. But I just need you guys to be able to use the link if you want to talk for a call-in. I have it open, the window open, so I know when you guys are there. So, in the meantime, let's move on to the MLB. The MLB topic. Here we go. Actually, no, not MLB. NBA. My fault. Jrue Holiday is now a Boston Celtic. I'm iffy just because I don't really know how I feel about the trade as a whole. I'm going to show you guys what I see. So we get a full breakdown of what the trade looks like. It's going to look like this. The Celtics are trading Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, a 2024 first-round pick that belonged to Golden State, and a 2029 unprotected first round from Boston to the Blazers in order to get Jrue Holiday. That's what they gave up. The rotation for Boston definitely gets helpful. It definitely gets some help in the guard spot. They get the defense they need in the guard position. The problem is, you got rid of both Williams. I'm not okay with that, personally. Just because I think you lost Grant this offseason. He went to Dallas. And now that you lose Robert Williams, your interior defense is just not looking great. I'm not liking the paint defense here. And I don't think Kristaps gives you what you need to really make up for that. Brogdon was an award winner last year. I don't like that he got traded for a guy who was an all-star. I get all-star, but the guy won an award. I would not be happy, personally. I wouldn't. Brogdon was 6-man. So you just sent the 6-man to the Blazers where he could possibly start. He really could. But let's actually explore this idea a little bit deeper, shall we? So let's take a look at the Boston roster. What does the Boston roster look like? Right? We're going to take a look. We're going to take a look when my computer wants to load. We're going to take a look at the Boston roster, and we'll talk about it. You know what? Yeah, there we go. Let's take a look at the depth. This is the important thing. All right? Now that they made the trades. Oh, they didn't update it yet. Okay. Whatever. Robert Williams considered the backup to Al Horford. I guess Brogdon was the backup to Jalen. Get rid of both these guys. Derek White is technically the starting point guard, but I think Jrue Holiday is going to get that position, and he'll rotate with Derek. Jalen's going to be the shooting guard. Tatum's still at the 3. Kristaps at the 4. Horford at the 5. But their bench, I'm not sold still. Peyton Pritchard, Lamar Stevens, O'Shea Brissett, Sam Hauser, Luke Cornett. This is not a roster that I would be excited about that would make me go, oh my gosh. Like, that's going to win a championship. Like, their rotation is very complete. But they're not, to me, a perfect team. They're not the perfect team, but I don't think there really is a perfect team. They got a really good starting group, but their bench is riddled to nothing. Now, here they didn't update it for the Blazers either, but Lillard's gone, right? So you're going to have Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, Jeremy Grant. Nurkic is gone. So is Nasir Little. So all you got to do is flip it back because they're return the guys DeAndre Ayton. So DeAndre Ayton is now the new starting center. They still got Matisse Thybulle. They got Jeremy Grant. They got Shaedon Sharpe. Anthony Simons. They added Malcolm Brogdon now. So you got a guy to go work with Scoot. To work with Scoot and help him get to the point he's got to be. And also on your bench as a rotation guy, you have Robert Williams. You could use him at the 4 or 5. I mean, you got Jabari Walker. I mean, what's the need, right? Jabari Walker should be fine. John Butler Jr., he'll serve as a center probably behind him. But again, Robert Williams is an upgrade over both of them. So we'll see. I think the Blazers really put themselves in a compete now mode, which I can't complain about. They're in a compete now mode. I can't complain about the way that the Blazers look. They look great. They really do. I have no issues with anything they're doing. They're making some very smart and good trades. That's how it should be. I love what they're doing. But if we're being serious for a second, the Blazers are in a rebuild, in a sense. They knew that Dame didn't want to play there anymore, even though he said he wanted to come back at one point, and they just were like, oh, you cut the bridge. Can't do it. You burned it. But I have to say, I'm concerned a little bit. Just because I feel like the veteran experience is kind of there, but it's a super young team, man. That's a very young Blazer team that they're going with here. I'm just hoping things go right for them, that they get on the right track, and that they start hot, and that they keep going. Because they look like they could be a play-in team, roster-wise. I love their depth. I think the rotation is a little inexperienced, but it is very, very optimistic for them. I love everything about that team. I'm hoping they stick to it and they stay strong. Because they are a good team. On paper, they look great. Boston's starting group is better, yes, but their bench is nothing compared to what Portland's got. It's the God's honest truth. So I'm fully on board with Portland winning this deal. I think that Boston's got a good group, but here's the thing. One guy gets hurt, your bench is not going to help you. That's what I'm a little afraid of for Boston. Their bench depth is gone. You can't name any of those guys there who you could put in the starting position and will make up for the points that are going to be lost. You're telling me that if you put Peyton Pritchard in, right? If Jrue Holiday has to go down with an injury, and you have to put Pritchard in, that Pritchard's going to give you 17 or 19? No. Pritchard's not giving you 17 or 19. He maybe gives you 12. Maybe 12 as a starter. But it's Jrue. That's why the health is so important. They got to make sure none of these guys get hurt. One injury to the C's, and they're in trouble. So that's what I got to watch for. The difference is with Milwaukee is that Milwaukee has the depth to make up for whatever trade they made. They still have a good depth there. They didn't have to lose their big young star, Marjon Beauchamp, who's going into his third season. That was their biggest thing to make sure of. They didn't want to lose him. He's a phenomenal talent. He's been on the rise over the last couple of years since he came in. He's been getting better. They're hoping to make him a future star and the next big star for the team moving forward. They're like next all-star. They're trying to build him up organically, just like they did with Giannis. So Milwaukee being able to keep the bench they have has been very helpful. And that's why I'm really liking them at the moment. I think this Celtics trade actually might have made them weaker. Again, rotate. The starting group is great. The starting five is great. They're probably better than Milwaukee. But their bench is nothing compared to Milwaukee. That's what I'm talking about. Starting groups can be great. But you got to rotate those guys out for breaks too. If your starting guys are on the floor for the first 10 minutes of a quarter and they only get, 25 points, great. Your second group comes in for another 5 minutes. So the last two of that one, starting to open the second. If they go in for the next 5 or 6 and they only get 6 points, what does that do? And then you have to go back out there and score another 25. It just doesn't work, That's why doors are open. Your bench has to be as good or just about as good as your starting group. They have to be. Obviously, you can't replicate all-stars, but you need guys that can still contribute at a good level. So if your all-star gets hurt, you can still trust them to give you 18 or 19, whatever it is, off the bench. That's what you need. You need to find guys that have that potential. And Milwaukee has it, and Boston doesn't. So that's my thought. I think the Blazers won the trade big time. Boston's group got weaker in terms of bench. Blazers got deeper, and they got a good group out there now. They could definitely fight for a play-in, 100%. So yeah, that is the talk for basketball. That's all I'm going to do on that for that trade. I'm going to check the guest room. We're still waiting on some callers. If you guys want to call into the show, once again, the link is in the chat here, video.ninja. There's going to be some stuff in there that says B Mansell Show Backstage. That link will put you into the guest room so that you guys will be able to pop on and bring you on at any moment. MLB Postseason Preview and Predictions. I've been dreading doing this because this is a very exhausting procedure. Because none of this is ever easy. It's not easy, folks. I don't want anybody to tell you it is. Picking the postseason and the playoffs for anything is never easy. Because there's always upsets. It always happens. There's always one upset. It's never always the favorites in every matchup win. The favorites in every matchup win. It's never like that. If it is, it just makes for boring entertainment for sports. Let's be truthful. It makes boring entertainment. If the same favorites win every single game, all the way up to the World Series, it doesn't make for good sports. You want upsets. It's built for that. That's why they make such complicated matchups. So, let's talk about it a little bit first, a little bit of background on why we're in this place, here in the first place with baseball. Here is what's going on with this playoff tracker. So let's talk about what happened. So, the Braves, were in. They're going to be the number 1 seed. They're good to go, right? We knew that. Here's how the final spots went. Let's do a quick recap. So, the Orioles ended up winning the division when we last talked on Friday, and they clinched the number 1 seed in the American League. So, they will have home field advantage throughout the entire American League Series. and until they hit the World Series, which I think, if I'm correct, the Braves have the edge there. So they have home field throughout the entire postseason. Orioles have it until the World Series. Once they hit the World Series, they lose that if the Braves make it. So here's some of the interesting things that happened. The Rangers on Friday were in first place. We talked about that. But Houston and Seattle were still alive. Houston decides to go on a tear and whoop around the Diamondbacks a little bit. And they ended up winning that series. And the D-backs somehow still clinched. But we're focusing on the American League first. The Astros won the majority of their games and won their series. Texas did not win their series. In fact, Texas was kept out of the division. They went in with a big lead. With a couple game lead. They lost the lead to the Astros. And the Astros have the tiebreaker over the Rangers because they won the season series against them. So because they were 2 games back and they won their series and Texas lost their series, the Astros were able to catch up and edge them out. And so now the Astros have the number 2 seed, which means they have a first round bye. They don't have to play in the wild card. And they've won the American League West again. However, the Rangers did make the postseason. They are the number 5. So they're the number 2 wild card behind the Tampa Bay Rays, who on paper are actually the second best team in the American League. They're the second best record, only 2 games behind the Orioles. Very weird, right? So that's going to be an interesting matchup. Rays and Rangers in the first round. Twins and Blue Jays. The Twins ended up actually winning the Central. They were one of the last teams to win their division. The Guardians really didn't give any competition. Neither did the Tigers. And the White Sox are just lol Chicago. But the 6th seed was interesting because that was supposed to be the Seattle spot, and then Seattle really, really had a hard time in their series. And that's when the Blue Jays did their job, secured their wins, got a playoff spot. Done. They did fall the 6th seed. Yes, they did. But they are playing good competition, playing the Twins, who are one of the worst teams in the playoffs in terms of division winners, where the Blue Jays actually have a better record than them, despite being the lowest wild card. Again, these are all very contested matchups with upset potential. So, that's the American League preview. Number 1 belongs to the Orioles. Number 2 belongs to the Astros. Number 3, the Twins. Number 4, the Rays. Number 5, the Rangers. Number 6, the Blue Jays. Let's look at the National League. Obviously, the Braves were going to be first. 104 wins for them, and they got the number 1 seed and home field advantage throughout the entire playoff. Now, the number 2 seed belongs to the LA Dodgers, another team that clinched fairly early. 100 wins for them. They also get a first round bye. So they do not play until the NLDS, the National League Division Series. Here's where things get fun. The Brewers are the 3 seed, and they won the National League Central with 92 wins. So they're going to have to play in the wild card round. They got the short end of the stick, just the way it goes. Now we go into the wild cards. Number 4 was the first wild card team to clinch, which was the Phillies. 90 wins for them. They were in a very good position. They're in a good spot to be right now. Can't complain going in. Until they found out who got the 5th seed. Because now they're nervous. Number 5 is the freaking Marlins, people. The Marlins got in the playoffs. I believe they said this is the 4th time in franchise history that the Marlins have made the postseason. And 2 of those times, when they made the postseason, they won the World Series. And the 3rd time they popped in, some people don't count it because it happened in the COVID year. So if you count about a full season, this is the 3rd time that they have made it in a full regular season slate. Which means the 2-0 record is still intact. So if they win this series, you got to watch out for the Marlins. Because this has happened so many times where the Marlins would come into the playoffs as a wild card and then go to the World Series and then just win it. Just because they can. That is the Marlins in a nutshell. I don't know if they have the same magic. We're going to see. Phillies and Marlins first round. It's going to be a hell of a finish. And because of those Marlins and because of those Diamondbacks who didn't make the playoffs, by the way, they did. They are the number 6 seed, 84-78. So they were actually like one game behind the Marlins. And they said the Marlins do not have to play the game against the Mets. They're good to go. Everything's fine. So the Marlins are going to be the 5th seed no matter what. Here's the thing. The D-backs barely got in because of the Marlins. The Marlins helped them out. Because Chicago was supposed to get in. And then Chicago completely crapped the bed in the last couple games and missed out. But these guys did their jobs and got into the playoffs. The D-backs lost the series to the Astros. But they still got in because of the help that they got from the other teams like the Brewers, who held back Chicago. And the Marlins did their job winning their series. And that's what helped them get here. So, a quick recap of the matches. Again, seeding. Number 1, Braves. Number 2, Dodgers. Both have a bye. They'll play in the NLDS. Number 3 seeds, the Brewers. They're playing the number 6 seed Diamondbacks. The number 4 Phillies are playing number 5 Marlins. That's how it's going to go. So let's do a prediction of this now. I'm pulling it up on the highlight scene here. This is the graphic. Let's set it up, people, shall we? First round, American League Wildcard Series. Rays and Rangers. You got really good pitching from the Rangers here. They are a very good unit overall. I like their pitching. Their bats have been a question a little bit towards the later end, but they have played up to par. The Rangers have played under their potential in the last 60 games. So now for the Rangers, your question is, can your pitching hold up? Can your bats wake up? Can you guys rebound from losing a big series that you needed to win? And I think the answer to that is going to be no. The Rays are going to win the series. That one, I love the Rangers, don't get me wrong. I even said it in an earlier podcast episode a while back during the trade deadline. When they got Max Scherzer, I said the Rangers were investing in a win. They were in win-now mode. This is their best chance to win a World Series right now. They need to do it. They need to go. They had to go out. They spent, and it backfired. It didn't work for them, and they lost the division because of it. They flamed out. They're going to continue to flame out. They're coming in cold. The Rays are coming in consistent and hot. Rays are taking this one. And then you've got the Twins and the Blue Jays. Twins and Blue Jays. Here is an interesting series. The Toronto is a decent team. They are. But they've really played under their potential. Like in these recent months. And I've realized that's become an issue for them. And who knows, if Alek Manoah didn't have such a bad year, maybe the Blue Jays are higher up here. Maybe they're not a 6 seed. Maybe they are fighting for a 5 or 4. Not win the division, but maybe they're in fighting for a 5 or 4. So maybe they be playing the Rays instead. But instead they get the Twins, which is a better deal for them because the Twins are just not a great team. And, they really need something big here to help them bail them out and get the big win here. And I think the Blue Jays can do it. I'm taking the Blue Jays. Screw the head-to-head. Taking the Blue Jays. I think Minnesota's in a weaker division. It's really affected them. So they are going to beat the Twins. So I have an issue with Minnesota. I don't think they're a bad team. I just don't think they can handle what Toronto's going to bring. The heat that Toronto's going to bring with Bichette is going to be nuts. So that means your ALDS is going to be the Orioles and the Rays and the Blue Jays and the Astros. 3 teams from the American League East will be in the ALDS out of 4 spots. How crazy is that? That's a real possibility. Now let's go to the National League side and try to catch up here. Marlins, Phillies. For the madness, I really want to pick the Marlins. For the jokes, for the madness, for everything. Because I love upsets. I'm taking Philly. I think overall pitching unit for Philly is good. Their hitting has been up to par. They've been doing things right. Everything's been going the right way. I know the Marlins won the season series. I get that. But I think the Phillies are just a different team in the playoffs. The Marlins don't have the experience with this core to catch up. Again, they said the same thing back in 97. They said the same thing in 2003. It's not like that. I don't think these Marlins are like those teams. I'm taking Philly. They're going to go play the Braves in the NLDS. And then you got Brewers D-backs. This is going to be the toughest one, I think, of the entire bracket. Because the Brewers they're really good bat-wise, and I like their fielding this year, but I just have an issue specifically with pitching. Pitching can be very hit or miss with them. If they're not on, they're pretty bad. But if they are on a good trend, on a good roll, they get off to a good start, they maintain it, that's where they can handle the D-backs and control them. The problem is I really think the D-backs are a team that can play from behind and get you. They take games from you. And I love, love, love upsets. I mean it. I do. And that's why I'm taking the D-backs. It's a tough call. It's a really tough call for me because, it's the D-backs. Their first postseason appearance in God knows how long. And it's just really difficult. It is really difficult to put them in here. I think the stat said this is their first postseason appearance since 2017. So for Arizona, this is a big, big series. Your first game back. This is your first time back. How do you respond? You need to show something for it, and this would be the way to show it. And taking out the Brewers would be a big deal. Obviously, I don't think they'll go much farther than this, but it is a big win, big momentous win. Take out the Brewers, put all the momentum on the D-backs back. Go for it. Why not? So that means your NLDS will be the Braves, Phillies, and D-backs, Dodgers. NL East matchup, NL West matchup. Let's go back to ALDS a second and go look at the American League side. Orioles, Rays. This has been one of the most difficult series all season to watch. Rays have the postseason experience. They have everything on their side to be the team that takes out the Orioles. They have the most control. They've got they got the best pitching. Orioles pitching is what concerns me more than anything else, is their inconsistency on that side. They are going to have a good game, or they're going to make your life. They're either going to make your life a living hell, or they're going to gift you the best win in the world. And in this case, that's why I got to lean towards Tampa Bay. I love the O's. I mean it. I do. I love their story. I love everything about them. But I just don't think they're ready. I don't think they're ready now. Next year would be a great year, yeah. But not this year. I'm not buying into the O's. Give me the Rays. And in terms of Blue Jays, Astros, I'm not even debating it. I'm not even debating it. They've been so good in the second half that I can't say anything else. The Astros are going to beat the Blue Jays. It's going to be a good series, but the Astros have this on lock. That's it. That is it. It's over. Astros get it. And they're going to go to the NLCS and the ALCS. So the ALCS is going to be Rays Astros. So let's look at the National League side. Braves Phillies. This is a rematch of a big series last year. And I think with the strength that I've seen from this team this year, I'm going to give it to the Braves. So 1-1 seed will make it to the NLCS, to the championship series. And that'll be the Braves, not the Orioles. So Braves beat out the Phillies. They're not going back to World Series. You're going to have a new team out of the National League go to the World Series. Then you got D-backs and Dodgers. I'm taking Dodgers. I really don't see the D-backs doing this. I think the Cinderella story ends right there. It's going to be a short Cinderella story for them. That's where they go. That's where they finish. Give me the Dodgers. Won't be a sweep. They'll take a game, but it is Dodgers' game to lose. It's their series. And now you have the championship series set. Rays, Astros, Braves, Dodgers. What do you do? Let's look at the National League side first. I think Braves, Dodgers, this is going to be a highly highly contested series. I mean, the Braves are so good. Acuna is 100% getting the MVP. They are just such a good team. Everything about them spits professionalism and just greatness. But I've seen this trend way too many times. And I have seen it happen where teams come out the gate, they don't do well, and it comes back to bite them. They think they have it all. They think they got it all known, that they're going to go far, and they're in full control. It's going to backfire. The Braves lose this series in 7 games. Dodgers go to the World Series. They're going back with Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and that whole group. That pitching staff, I love what they're producing so far. That the youthfulness they got right there in that starting pitching. People are scared of it. I'm embracing it. I think it means you're not going to be prepared for what they're going to bring to your squad. I am fully in on the Dodgers. They're not going to be prepared for what that pitching staff comes in with. Give me LA. And in the ALCS side, sorry, this is confusing me. ALCS side, Rays and Astros. Every bit of me inside is telling me Astros. Like, even though they got 90 wins compared to the 99 of the Rays, everything's telling me the Astros got it. This is the Astros, right? But I just feel like the unit that the Tampa Bay Rays have pitching-wise can fight with the best of them. Don't get me wrong. The Astros have been so good in the second half, it'd be really hard to take them out. Unfortunately, it's going to happen. Give me the Rays. The Rays are going to the World Series. You're going to have a rematch of the COVID year. You're going to have a COVID year rematch between the Rays and the Dodgers. Now, the last time I did this and we had this happen, this is where the trend started. This was the last time I made a correct prediction for the World Series. The only thing I got wrong was who was going to be the victor. And I feel like I owe myself. I would be wrong for me not to double down and try to take this opportunity to correct a mistake. It would be wrong to do that. I need to correct the errors of my ways and what I've done in the past with these MLB predictions. It's just not right. And that's why I'm doubling down and picking the Rays. The Tampa Bay Rays, to me, are winning the World Series. You're going to have a rematch of the 2020 World Series in COVID, where you had all that miracle stuff happen. And it's just, I'm stuck on the fact that the Dodgers, look, I love their unit. Everything about them is spitting, this is our year. This is our year. We're going to shock the world and do everything. And make you see that this Dodgers team is worth every penny. Every penny we spent. And then the Rays go, LOL. we don't need that. We don't care. We'll spend like terrible money, like nothing, like no money, and we'll still beat you. So I'm giving it to the Rays. I love their group. I really cannot say it enough. I love their group. If they lose to the Rangers, oh well. The real test is actually the Rangers to me. I feel the real test is Texas. Texas came in really cold. If they can't beat a cold Texas, then I don't know. I don't know with them. I wouldn't know. If they can't beat a cold Texas, Houston's going back. And you can book that. Houston will go back to the World Series if the Rays are eliminated before they face them. Houston's going back. That's a guarantee. Stamp it. Put it in the books. Houston will go back if Rays get eliminated early. Orioles are not stopping them. The Blue Jays ain't stopping them. And the Twins ain't stopping them. It's the truth. And now you flip back to the NLCS, the National League side. There is no competition to take out these Dodgers. I think the only comp you have here for like serious competition is the Braves. That's it. I don't think the D-backs don't give enough competition to the Dodgers to really put up a threat. The D-backs are a great team. I love them. They are very scrappy, young, feisty. I love it. Everything, their energy, their coaching, their pitching. I mean, their pitching is a lot of work, but they're growing in the right direction. I love to see it from Arizona. I just don't think this is their year. It's just not it. But again, love what they're doing. The Brewers, not a threat. The Brewers are not a serious threat to me in any capacity. So I'm not even going to consider them here. If the Marlins were to make it far enough, I mean, at that point, it's just destiny and fate. If you were to lose, it's because it's the fate of the Marlins to win the whole thing. It would be funny, though, if we got a Tampa Bay Rays, Miami Marlins World Series. I would be laughing my tail off. It would be hysterical. Because it's a battle of Florida. You didn't see it coming. Tampa Bay and Miami? Come on. It's insane. I would love it, though. Keep it in Florida. And then the Phillies. Phillies are always a tough team to get out. They always have been. But I think for the Braves, they got under control. But if they get past the Braves, they probably would be the only other team I'd consider to take out the Dodgers. That's it. Braves and Phillies. That is it. I don't consider anybody else. No Diamondbacks. No Marlins unless it's the team of fate. And definitely not the Brewers. But I do believe it's going to be Rays and Dodgers again. The Rays are going to win the World Series. And they're going to get their first win in franchise history. And it's going to be an amazing moment for baseball. A small market team like that, I mean, you can call it small market, big market, whatever you want to call it. I personally believe it's small market for baseball. But Tampa Bay is back, and they're going to win the whole thing. They have the experience on their side. They have the knowledge on their side. They have the bat on their side. They have the pitching on their side. Everything is tilted in favor of the Rays. And I fully believe they're going to pay off here. It's going to pay off. Who cares if they're a wild card team? They got it on their side. They're at full advantage here. They cannot fail this. They beat the Rangers. I'll know for real that they're going far. Because I really do not believe that Baltimore beats them. I really do not. And if they do, great. But they're not getting past Houston. Rays are the only team that know Houston and can beat Houston. To me. That is it. Because they are hot. And the Rays can cool them off. I don't think Baltimore has the talent. I mean, not the talent. They don't have the experience and the knowledge to cool off a team like Houston when it comes to the postseason. They're always good at it. They're not going to be able to do it. Astros have too much experience and too much of a strategy. But yes, this is my World Series prediction. And that's that. That's your postseason preview. A lot of things can come into factor here. This is where stars are made. This is where legends are born. It's in October. We're going to see, again, World Series prediction, Rays, Dodgers. And this comes from a Yankee fan. I mean, you see the Rays hat back there. And you see a lot of baseball hats I have up here. But I really am telling you, I think it's really the Rays' year. They started great. Baltimore got ahead of them. Baltimore never let it go. Great. But as we all know, the regular season is regular season. When you hit the postseason, it's nothing like the regular season. Things change. Don't forget last year. Last year, do you remember what the NLCS was? The Phillies and the Padres. Two teams that were wildcard teams. They weren't supposed to be there. And they went there. They did it. They did what they were supposed to do and they advanced. And the Phillies went to the World Series as a wildcard team. Obviously got beat by the Astros, but they were a good team. They were a really good team. Obviously, I don't think they're going to have the same magic this year. But again, it proves anything can happen in baseball. It's not always the hottest team of the regular season is going to be the best team to go and win the whole thing. It's seldom the case. But that's MLB for the most part. We do have one other thing I want to talk about before we jump in there. Let's just make sure. Anybody calling into the show? No, not yet. Okay, the door is still open. If you guys want to call into the show and have a chat about anything sports or ask any questions, it's in the chat here. It is pinned. I'm going to pin it again. It's there. So it's pinned in the chat. If you guys do want to watch or call into the show, it's there. Just got to click the link and you can hop on in. But let's move on now to the more depressing and sad portion of the show. I want to talk about a legend of the game who recently passed away. Tim Wakefield, a two-time World Series winner with the Red Sox, a representation of what it meant to be Boston. Passed away from brain cancer yesterday after a strong battle. He was one of the best players you probably would see as a pitcher. Underappreciated. Things he did were phenomenal. You couldn't even fathom the things he could do on the diamond. He himself was an excellent player. He had one of the nastiest pitches I think I've ever seen as well. One of the nastiest. And that is known as the knuckleball. His knuckleball could take anybody out. It could beat anybody. His breaking ball was magical, even at times. This Red Sox team you're watching right now, their spirit, pride, and everything rested on the shoulders of this man. His pitches may not look fast. They may not look that good. But the break he would get right there would sink so many batters and so many playoff hopes for so many teams. He was that good. And that's why he was such a big part of the Red Sox. And he was a great man. A very good man. Nothing but love for him and his family. Condolences and everything are out to them. They must be going through a very hard time. You know, especially after everything that happened involving Schilling, which we will not go into detail on out of respect for the family. Wakefield he wasn't just a great baseball player. He was a very good person. And if you knew Wakefield, you knew the things he did were very admirable and respectable. He was one of the most respected people in sports. There was nobody like him in terms of community, in terms of the service he put out for those around him. He was a classic case of, may not look like the best guy when he's out there on the diamond because, you know, it's baseball and you got to be focused on the game. But off the field, he was the most pure and amazing person. And if you don't believe me, there are plenty of people who will tell you otherwise. And that means, I'm talking baseball players will tell you, former teammates, a lot of things will be said. Yeah. As expected, for those, a little bit more detail on Wakefield for those, because I know we were just talking baseball. We could probably get some baseball fans in here. 19 years in the majors, all-star for the American League in 2009, and he won the Roberto Clemente Award in 2010, which usually goes to a person who embodies the spirit of Roberto and community and service and giving and being a good human being and being a good person. Selfless, caring, you know, everything that stands out about being a great human being and being the person to set examples for future generations. And that was Tim. That was Tim. And if you don't believe me, we'll listen to his former teammate, Jason Varitek, comment about it. He was probably more distraught than anybody else. So we're going to pull that up real quick.
It's horrible. And it's horrible for his wife, Bree, Trevor, his family, his friends. I mean, he's a young man.
Can you say about the kind of teammate and friend he was?
I don't know if I've said anything. I think I'm showing it. I've always said it. Wake, he exemplifies what this uniform is, and it's not just. It's horrible for his wife, Bree, Trevor. It's what he's done in the community, the way he's represented.
Sorry about that. We'll try that again with the clip.
Form is, and it's not just the name on the back, it's the name on the front. It's what he's done in the community, the way he's represented it, where he's respected the game, which goes on to the whole league of being a precious part of what we do, is respect for the game and for your place. He's exemplifies what it means to be a Red Sox and what it means to be a professional. a wonderful dad, great husband. We've been through a lot.
Yep. That's the kind of man he was. He was a good person. He was just everything. Everything right that you would want. You look at an athlete, you look up to somebody to be your hero. Somebody that we look up to athletes as young kids. And I was obviously very young when Wakefield played. And he was towards the end of his career at that point. I started watching baseball when I was 6, 7 years old. That would be dating back to about 2006, 2007. And so I got to see the tail end of his stuff with Boston, and he was amazing on the mound. He really was. He gave Yankee fans a headache a lot. And it wasn't just the Red Sox who felt sympathy and were completely gutted by the loss of Tim. It was league-wide. The Yankees issued statements. The Pirates issued a statement. People went out of their way to talk about Tim. Tim was a great, amazing person. If other teams are coming out and making a statement about you and how great you are and how much you were loved, you were a good person, man. You were. It's the way it is. Again, condolences out to his family. Hope he's being taken care of. I could never imagine losing somebody so close, especially at such a young age. Tim was not even 60 before he passed. He was, again, very young. I believe the age was 57. And, you know, it's a shame the way people found out about him having the brain cancer. Family's trying to keep it quiet, and it was not, those wishes were not respected. But Tim Wakefield was respectable. His foundation work to help people in need and those who were underprivileged and needed help and support. He invested so much money and time into it and volunteering. And it just shows you the kind of person he was. It was selfless. Never selfish. He was never worried about what somebody else. He was never worried about himself. He was worried about everybody else around him. That's the kind of person he was. And, you know, it was never about how am I doing. It's about what can I do to help you feel better? What can I do to make sure that you are good, that you're okay? Do you need help? What can I do for you? What do you need? Let me help you out. Never said anything else. That was the kind of person Tim was. And as you saw from Jason Varitek, it was rough for everybody. And even now, I didn't even know the person personally. But hearing these stories about Tim, it's so emotional. Because you realize the impact that you have on somebody's life. You never realize it until you're gone. And for Tim, I'm happy that people made it known to him prior to him departing. And, you know, it just shows the love and admiration and everything people had for him because of who he was. So if there's something to take away from this, don't be afraid to help people. Be good to people. If you see somebody in need, don't hesitate. Say something. Help them. See if there's anything you can do for them. If you see somebody homeless on the ground, buy them breakfast. If you see somebody who looks like they are in ripped up clothes or need something, get them a pair of clothes. Put a shirt on their back. If you see somebody who is struggling to cross the street, they're in a walker, they're in a wheelchair, and they need help, don't be afraid to push them across the street and help them. Somebody needs you to carry something up for them to the stairs, to their apartment or somewhere. Don't be afraid to hesitate and help them out. You know, just make sure they're not going to kidnap you, but be helpful, be nice, be good people. That's it. And that's Tim. Don't ever... There are times where you can put yourself before others, but never forget that someone else, you could very well be in somebody else's shoes, their shoes, at any point in your life. So never forget that. be grateful that you aren't in the position that they are. Some people are not as fortunate. With that note, we're going to go to the NCAA football and go to the rankings. So now let's tighten up and let's get into this. Now I'm going to get my voice back up here. Yeah, we got the rankings. So, interesting week of football for college. Some things I didn't get, some things I did. It's going to be fascinating. So, let's break it down. So, going through the complete rankings, we have it fully listed with what happened this week. So, we had 3 ranked teams lose and are still in the polls and are still in the top 25. Utah, who fell to now... Utah's now down to number 18 in the country. They lost to Oregon State 21-7, who was number 19. They rose up to 15. They got a 4-spot jump. Duke took a rough loss to Notre Dame, very close. Unfortunately, their QB did get hurt, which affected them severely. And they ended up losing to Notre Dame in a close game, 21-14. They went for number 17 and 19 in the country. Missouri, the Tigers, out of nowhere, still undefeated. They beat Vanderbilt 38-21, and they rose up a couple spots. Now they're 21st in the country. And we'll also say Fresno State got a good rise too, beating Nevada 27-9. And in terms of another big fall for another big loss, LSU dropping a big game to Ole Miss, 55-49. Ole Miss, who was number 20 in the country, went up 4 spots to number 16, and LSU fell to number 23 after being at number 13 just last week. Big changes. Big changes. But we're going to throw up the highlights screen here so you guys can see the rankings. I don't know if you guys can see it too clearly. I'm trying my best here, but Georgia is number 1 in the country. However, they are losing their grip on the number 1 spot in terms of points. They are number 1, but they barely beat Auburn 27-20, and now they've got number 20 Kentucky next week. A really tough competition they're going to have. That's their first top 25 opponent they've had to face this season. Michigan, number 2, coming off a dominating win against Nebraska. Texas, coming off a really good, win against number 24 Kansas, 40-14. Ohio State didn't play this week, and neither did Florida State, so both of them are going to remain in their spots at 4-5. No rises, no falls. Number 6 is Penn State, 5-0. They were at Northwestern and crushed them 41-13. And the Washington Huskies were in Arizona, beat them 31-24, and a little bit of a close one. But none of these teams in the top 7 moved. They were all remain in the same spot. Do I agree with that decision? Absolutely not. I think Oregon being at number 8 is a crime, personally. I think they should be higher. Oregon being at number 8 is a problem. I think they need to be higher. Beating Stanford 42-6. I mean, it is Stanford, yes, but I just don't agree with the call. So if I were to re-rank these in the top 10, by the way, to close out the top 10, you have number 9 USC beating Colorado barely 48-41. Very close game. They went down a spot because of it. And Notre Dame at number 10 at 5-1 after beating Duke 21-14 because of, QB getting hurt. So let's start out now with this. How do I explain this? Notre Dame being in the top 10, I'm okay with. I'm okay with them in the top 10. USC being in the top 10, I'm okay with that. Oregon should be way higher. And this is what I mean by way higher. This is going to be very controversial to most people, but I'm going to go with it anyway, because this is probably going to piss off some people. I think Georgia shouldn't be number 1. I think I would put Georgia at 3. Not even at 2. And this has come from somebody who is a Georgia fan. I'm not thinking Georgia's number 1. I think they're number 2 in the country. The teams I'd put above them, I'd put Michigan above, and I'd probably move Texas above and put them just above Ohio State. Again, I have not seen them against ranked competition. The closest they had was South Carolina, and they were losing bad at halftime against them. They got lucky and came back and got a decent win, but they do not look dominant. They barely squeaked it out against Auburn. Now they got to face an undefeated Kentucky, who just got off knocking the wheels off of Florida, who was number 22 and is no longer ranked. Like, it's so bad. Florida got beat so bad that they're not even listed in, didn't even get votes to get into the polls this time around. Now, on the horizon looking in right now to get into the polls is Maryland, Kansas State, and Texas A&M is the main three. Maryland would be very interesting put in here. As for everything else, again, I think Michigan, Texas, and Georgia would be the pick. That's my order. I'll say Ohio State at 4, Florida State 5 is okay. Penn State at 6, I'm going to say no. Well, actually, yeah, I'm going to say no. Oregon should be number 6. Penn State 7. Washington 8. Keep USC at 9. Or Notre Dame at 10 is okay. Alabama at 11 is fine. Oklahoma at 12, they still got a lot to prove, so I get why they're 12. North Carolina still being undefeated is a big mystery of the world. Washington State's got a good test this week, but they went up in the rankings because of everybody else taking some serious losses. Oregon State definitely benefited big time. I think them being 4-1 is the only reason why they're not higher, because they do have a loss. Ole Miss getting a big win over LSU definitely helped them a lot, but again, one loss, that's why they're down. And Miami, I want to see what the U do, because the U are number 17 and they got Georgia Tech. They just got off of a bye week. So we're going to see what they do and what they can pull off. As for everybody else, I mean, everything else I can't really argue. Everything else is practically the same. Now remember, there is a rule with college football here with these guys, the top 25. If you record 2 losses, you can kiss your playoff hopes goodbye. The one team we can now say it's in the top 25 that will not be going to the playoff is LSU. The Tigers are done, people. The Tigers are finished. That big loss that they had against Ole Miss sank them. They could not afford to do that. And now LSU is done. So you can kiss the Tigers goodbye. They are not going to the college football playoff. But we'll see. A lot could happen. We're going to week 6 now. Some of the big games to watch that are going to be very interesting. Georgia, obviously, at Kentucky. Versus Kentucky. I'd say Texas versus Oklahoma. If Oklahoma wins that, I'm going to have to change my stance on Texas. Maryland and Ohio State. That is going to be a very contested game because Maryland is the one team that's hiding outside the top 25 right now that's got the most votes, sitting at number 26 in this case. If they were to beat Ohio State, they're going to make a massive jump into the polls. A massive jump. And you're going to see Ohio State take a sizable fall. Notre Dame's playing Louisville, number 25 in the country. They should not lose that one, but we'll see. Anything can happen. Notre Dame can be hit or miss. And another couple games that should be watched. The Syracuse Orange against North Carolina. Syracuse has been a bit of a tough out this year. North Carolina's got to take them on in an ACC battle. ACC competition is always difficult when they're facing each other. It's never easy. I would also like to add in Arkansas against Ole Miss. Arkansas with KJ Jefferson is a nightmare to face. If Ole Miss can take them out, good. Keep it strong. The SEC competition is fierce this year. Missouri's got LSU. LSU trying to rebound from a really bad loss. That's who they face this week. They're going to be in Missouri, though, so Missouri should have advantage. We'll see how it holds out. And that's that for the major competition in the top 25. So those are the major games to watch. Everything else seems like a little bit of an easy one. Like Michigan at Minnesota, should be Michigan's control. Same thing for Florida State versus Virginia Tech. Should be easy. But again, keyword is should. Things can go wrong at any point. But yeah, I feel like Georgia being at number 1 is wrong. I think Texas should be higher. Michigan should be higher. Georgia should be at 3. At minimum, the highest they should be is at 3. If I was really in a negative mood, I'd probably send them down to either 5 or 6. If I was feeling really negative. But the one thing I'm telling you to watch are 2 teams. In the top 10, you got to watch for Washington and Oregon. Both of those squads are very quick to rise. They will rise up those boards super fast. You won't see it coming either. They'll be up there. Washington and Oregon will be in the top 5 at some point. Because I think Florida State's going to fall off at some point. I don't trust Texas 100%, and I don't trust Georgia. So Texas, Georgia, and Florida State are my weakest squads in that top 5. Michigan and Ohio State are just in the right place right now. For right now, they're in the right place. But things could change. Who knows? That's why we call it college football. It's the wildest sport. You can never bet on it because you never know when you're going to be right or wrong. You never know. So that's that for college football. Let's take a look at the Liberty and the Aces finals preview, because that's what I think the big story is that everybody wants to talk about. Or at least if you watch women's basketball. I personally do. I do enjoy it. I know there are a lot of people who make really bad remarks about it, and they need to stop because it's actually not terrible. It's actually pretty good. I really like some of the physicality in it. I mean, it's mostly a shooter's league, but it is phenomenal, honestly. Some of the shots I'd see them take are pretty crazy. They could pull up from anywhere. But here's what you got to prepare for with this. So, with this finals show-off they're going to have here, people have to know that it's going to be a best-of-5 series. Let's start with that. For those who don't know WNBA, let's start with this. It's a best-of-5 series. It's going to be on ABC, 3 p.m., October 8th. So you're talking Sunday. Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern on ABC, the WNBA Finals are going to be on. Of course, it's on during Football Sunday, so I'm sure a good amount of you probably won't watch it because you guys think football is going to be way more interesting than women's basketball. But it is still a big deal because these are the two biggest teams in the league this year. And the Aces are the defending champs. The Liberty are the super team. And what else can I add? I'm honestly trying to figure out what else to add to that. I mean, it's not, they don't like being called a super team, but they have a really good squad of people. I mean, you're talking this is what we're talking. With New York winning this year and making it this far, it's because of a few things. And they'll never admit it, but it's the truth. They got Jonquel Jones, which is a 2021 MVP of the league. Then they signed two-time MVP Breanna Stewart, who just won an MVP now this season. She's one of the best point guards in the league's history. Courtney Vandersloot, who they signed in free agency. Sorry, I didn't mean that about Breanna. I meant that about Vandersloot. Oh. Sorry, got him mixed up. Vandersloot is one of the best point guards in league history. But they signed Breanna Stewart, who has now won another MVP this season. And they're trying to surround them around two of their big stars that they have there already, which was the number 1 overall pick, Sabrina Ionescu, who had just came out with the signature shoe, by the way. Probably one of the best shoes I've ever seen made by Nike. Not a joke. And an all-star from 2021, Laney. I'm not even going to try to say the first name because I don't want to butcher it and be seen in a wrong light. So Liberty came into this saying, we're going to challenge Las Vegas. We're going to do whatever it takes to win. And so that meant go out and get as much as you need to surround your stars. And that's exactly what they did. And they did finish second in the standings behind Vegas. But they haven't been to a final since 2002. So this was a big deal. This is their first finals appearance in 21 years. 21 years. They did everything right. The MVPs did their job. Jones and Stewart did their job helping them secure some big wins to shut down Connecticut because the Sun had been on a really good tear to squeeze into the playoffs with Thomas. And it just didn't, they just couldn't facilitate and close it out on the Liberty. So Liberty are now in the finals. And it's interesting because Stewart was struggling to start the playoffs, but she did figure it out. In fact, in the clinching game that they had, she scored 27 points. So she finally woke up and got back on track. did her thing, and they're good. But this is where things get interesting because we're going to see the Aces, who have always been a tough team, with the person who probably should have won the MVP. I'm not going to say it outright. I think Brianna was very good. But Aisha probably should have won. She probably should have won. Like, her defense has been incredible this year, and it's no surprise. She's been carrying this team offensively as well. 30 points, at least, in her previous 3 games that she's played. But on Friday, she had 13 points, and she wasn't doing well, and she had committed 9 turnovers. The Dallas Wings had them in full control, those Aces. But in the end, I mean, you go through it and you just see the Wings couldn't answer for anything. There was always a backup option for the Aces to come in and get the things figured out. Asia was actually really good in the rebounding side. And what's insane is Asia Wilson as a defender is probably one of the best you'll ever see in women's basketball. She just won her second Defensive Player of the Year award. And it definitely showed in the series because against the Wings, they shot 7 of 44 against her. I want you to process that. Hear that number again. 7 for 44. Or 7 of 44. That percentage comes out to about 15.9%. Shooting in general was 15.9%. That is insanely low. That just tells you how good of a defender she is when she challenges. And it's the same because it really took... It took Arike Ogunbowale from Dallas, their guard, to really try and get them back in the game and save them. And for the Wings, they just couldn't get it. They were held off. They held them off. It's unfortunate, but you know what? This is what happened. So now we're going to have an interesting matchup against 2 severely high-powered teams, and we'll see how it pans out because I'm fully on board with this. This is going to be one of the best basketball matchups you're going to see. If you were a basketball fan and you've never watched women's basketball, watch the WNBA Finals. I ask you to do that. It's going to be good. I promise you it's going to be a lot of good basketball. It really is. It's very good. And why I was saying that Asia probably should have won is that because as an offensive leader, Asia was averaging 25.8 this season in the postseason so far. If we're going off the regular season like alone, if we're just going regular season, she was averaging 22.8. So she's averaging more now than she did in the regular season. 22.8. And Breanna Stewart was just at 23, flat. She had more rebounds than Breanna Stewart. She had more blocks than Breanna Stewart. Not so much. It doesn't look like it was really the same with steals. But in terms of like everything else that I've seen so far, she really had Breanna beat on a lot of things. They play the same position, and she had her beat on a lot of things. So that's why I'm saying Asia probably should have got it. Because she played a little bit better, and the team did finish in first. So it makes sense to give her the MVP, but I guess they wanted to do something different, give it to Breanna. But I will also add, I think the one thing nobody's factoring in here about why Connecticut played such an important factor and why they challenged Liberty so hard. Alyssa Thomas has been really, really much of an anchor for them. And what I mean by that is that she had 15.5 points, which, some may not be much, but for her, it was really good. Almost 2 steals, and averaging 8 assists, 10 rebounds. She really was doing everything she could to give them the best opportunity to win. And in the series clinching game for New York, even though they lost by 3, she had a triple-double in the game. 17, 15, and 11. Despite registering a -6. Don't know how, but she registered a -6. But again, there was a lot of competition for this MVP award this year, and there were so many good cases. But unfortunately, You can't give one out to everybody, and everybody who doesn't watch women's basketball only knows really one player who currently plays, and that's Sabrina, which I think is hysterical. But she had a good year too. 17, 5.6 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and a steal. She's not really a defensive machine. She's more known for how good she is as a three-point shooter. She's very good with threes. I think her percentage was like just under 45%, and she led the league with that percentage. Just under 45%, which is insane. I hope people understand that. She also led the league in, three-pointers made per game. It was 3.6. And in this postseason so far, I mean, you're talking about she hasn't been the best three-point shooter so far in these postseason. That belongs to Rin Howard with Atlanta. If you're talking about people that are still in, she's got the same average of made as Kelsey Plum from Las Vegas. And in terms of everything else that I'm reading here, I'm telling you, yeah, Asia 100% should have been the MVP. Even in the postseason, she's averaging 25.8 points, 11.2 rebounds, and 3.2 blocks. Been a machine. So you know what? I think I'm in with this, with what's going on with the WNBA. I think I'm in on the fact that I think the Aces are probably going to give a good fight in the series. I don't know if they're going to win the series, though. I think I'm leaning toward the Liberty. The Liberty got to do something. They got to win something here, and this would be the way to do it. This would be a big, big win for them. I'm fully rooting for them here. In a 5-game series, though, it's tough. I don't know if they have the defense. I don't know if New York has the defense to handle what Asia's going to bring and what Kelsey's going to bring. That's what I'm worried about for them. So I'm going to give it to the Aces in 5. It's going to be a 5-game set. It's going to go the full distance. Aces are going to win it because they have the home court advantage. So I'm giving it to the Aces. 5 games. It will go the full distance. Aces win. They're going to go back to back. That's going to have to be my take on this one. And finally, to close out the show, we're going to do a quick Seahawks-Giants breakdown of the game itself and how it's going to go. So, with that being said, let's go through it. So, tonight's game. The Seahawks and Giants, things to know the ins and outs of. I did tell you to give you some betting advice too. Again, don't take what I say to heart. It doesn't mean I know everything. It doesn't mean that my word is law. I mean that very seriously. Because a lot of people take what I say out of context, or they'll say it, or they'll take my advice, get mad that I'm wrong, and I'll say, well, I didn't say I was going to be right. It's the truth. Everything I say is not going to be factual. It's not going to be 100% factual, everything. If I give you betting advice, you know how bets work. Everything is a risk. Betting is risky. So, we're going to go through some ideas, and I'll tell you guys what I'm thinking right now in terms of production, or like in terms of the way it's going to go. So, let's go with it. Here we go. So, let's talk about it. Seahawks-Giants, first off, the projection is that Seattle's going to win. The spread is 2.5 on the game. It's in New York, and the Giants haven't won a home game yet. And the Seattle has not lost on the road yet. Now, if you're comparing quarterbacks here, let's start with that. And the over-under, by the way, is 47. These odds are from Caesars. So that's what Caesars says. Now, in terms of passing, so far, Geno has been the better passer by far. There's no changes in that so far whatsoever. So that's going to have to stay the same. Geno is 71 of 103, 736, 4 TDs, and 1 interception. He has been very, very good up to this point. Daniel Jones, 63-97, 562, 2 TDs and 4 interceptions. Not good. Not too good for him. Barkley, I don't even think Barkley's playing tonight. Barkley is doubtful to play. He's not going to play. Andrew Thomas is out, so they're not going to have their starting offensive tackle. The Seattle Seahawks are banged up too. Draymond Jones is going to be questionable. Derek Hall, the linebacker, is questionable. Kobe Bryant is doubtful, the corner. Charles Cross, the offensive tackle, is doubtful. And Artie Burns, the corner, is out for tonight. So they got 3 guys out. 2 of them are starters or rotational guys. And, yeah, I mean, Charles Cross, big loss there too. And receiving-wise, we're going to say DK Metcalf leading the way, 15 catches, 234 and a touchdown. And Waller's been the leading receiver for the Giants, 132 on 12 catches. And in terms of rushing, Walker's been a beast. 47 carries, 204, and 4 touchdowns. Picked up right where he left off. So let's go through and preview some things here, see what it looks like offensively, and some of the matchups. Giants last 5, they did drop a game to San Fran last week. 30-12 wasn't pretty. Barely beat out Arizona 31-28, and then they ended up actually losing to Dallas in the opener. I'm sure we all remember that, 40-0. So can the Seahawks do the same thing that San Fran did? I mean, when San Fran played them, San Fran hasn't played them yet. But San Fran has beaten the Rams, and that alone already gives me much attention because the Rams are not a bad football team. If I'm correct, when the Rams played the Seahawks lost. If I'm correct. Yes. When they opened the season up against the Rams, the Seahawks lost. So that means the Seahawks are a step down from the Rams, who also were super contestant with the 49ers, who are arguably the best team in football right now. So if Seattle loses to a team that barely lost to the 49ers, how bad does that make the Seahawks if they barely lost to the Rams? The Giants, however, beat the worst team in football, who was the worst team in football, and are now floating. They don't know what they're going to do. Now, the biggest thing to note with this stat that I just found is that Seattle is perfect at MetLife Stadium and that is the truth. Every time they've gone into MetLife Stadium, they've never lost the game. They've never lost since MetLife Stadium has been constructed and played in. Can the Giants end that trend tonight is the question. I'm like on the fence. I don't know 100% if I can outright say the Giants are going to lose or if they're going to win. In terms of yardage, that's what I'm more focused on, the yardage. Seahawks, 3 games. Rams, Detroit, Carolina. They beat Detroit, which is a big deal. Detroit is like one of the hardest teams to face right now. And Carolina they beat them. They beat them by 10. And that team has not won a game. So, it's inconsistent every week. It's not the same. So, let's look at this then. Yardage. Seahawks got 350 total yards compared to the Giants' 277. Their ground game's been way better, and their passing game's been way better. The only issue that opens the door for the Giants is that the Seahawks are a passer-friendly defense. 418 yards allowed, 339 in the air, 79 on the ground. They're very good on ground defense, on the run defense. Their air yards is what you need. You need Jones to go through the air to get the job done tonight, do what he's got to do there. It's all going to come down to whatever Dable plans up for the team. Can he do that? Don't know. So let's contemplate and figure this out while I pull up the bets for this game tonight. So I can give you guys the best player prop possible. Again, if you guys are using DraftKings, you get a 50% same game parlay boost in the game. So if you guys do use DraftKings, you'll get a 50% boost. Make sure to use that whenever you do these bets, if you're doing a parlay. So, real quick, as we look through all the stats and all the information. The Seahawks have gone to MetLife 5 times, never lost. 3 of those 5 came against the Giants, and they're 28-12 all time on Monday night, which means they're very good on Monday Night Football. But this is basically a must-win game for the Giants. You can't lose this game. So there's a lot of pressure on New York to win this, because right after this, you're going to Miami and Buffalo. And I don't think you want to face Miami Buffalo back-to-back and expect to win both games or even one. You want to beat the Seahawks, stay on track, and be prepared to go 2-4. So you need to win tonight. The Seahawks have won 2 in a row. They're getting healthier. They're still beat up, but they're going to probably... They got to figure something out. The Giants have to do something here to get back on track. If I'm a guessing man, I'm taking the Giants. I'm not going money line. I'd probably go the Giants. If you're going to do an alternate spread, I'd say give the Giants... Go with plus 4.5 or plus 5 with the Giants. Giants plus 5 would be the bet for me if you're going alternate spread. Plus 5. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't know if the Giants are going to pull it off, but a plus 5 could work for an alternate spread. Now let's talk about some of the game lines here. Some of the big game lines we're talking about here. The over-under is 47. I've been okay with over-unders. I prefer doing it in-game. So like in-game betting for that. So you just decide, okay, the third quarter, okay, I see where they're going with this. We're just going to bet the over here. We're going to bet the under on that because they're not really doing too great scoring-wise. Okay, that's typically how you would bet it. But alternate spread, if you're using DraftKings odds, and you said it's a 5, right? If it's a plus 5, the odds are minus 200 for the Giants. Minus 200. That's a plus 5. If you go to the touchdown scorers, right? Anytime touchdowns, this is what I was talking about. They have cut down the margins for the guys. So if you were going with Kenny Walker to score a touchdown tonight for the Seahawks, that's a minus 130 for an anytime touchdown. Don't like what that's doing. The next closest guy is Danny Jones with a plus 125. You also have the first drive results, the quick hits, the weekly specials, the passing props. There we go, passing props. Right now, Daniel Jones over under 1.5 touchdowns. I'm not going to touch that one. Geno Smith over 1.5 or under 1.5. I'm not going to touch that either. I can't tell you whose passing game's going to work. Because the way their passing offenses work, Geno's been more successful, but their ground game has been better than their passing game. Now, passing yards is my question. The yardage is always a big question with these teams. And when you go back and you look at their questions, right? I mean, you go back and look at their yards. I said they average 245 yards a game right now. That's where the Seahawks are at. Geno Smith's numbers is an over-under 247. So they'd have to throw over their average. Can they go over their average on the Giants' defense is the question. The Giants' pass defense allows 227 right now this season. That is not a favorable number for the Seahawks. Not favorable. If you do the math on that, that would mean going with the under. But again, things can happen. The Giants could completely be terrible today and let the Seahawks get everything. Now, for Danny, his over-under is at 229. The average passing right now for the Giants is 189 per game. But Seattle allows 339 passing yards. So if you do the math on that and you add it up, you're talking about probably, 189, 339. It's like a 150 gap. 150-yard gap right there. So if you divide that and you go to 75 plus 189, you're going to the 50s on that. You would be below. You would be under the, you'd be way over whatever Daniel Jones is projected, which is 229. But the question is, will he actually throw the ball tonight? Again, big questions we have to ask ourselves. They don't run the ball well, and the Seahawks won't let you run. So you might have to have no choice but to throw it. And is he okay throwing it, knowing that he's had issues all season? That's why you're better off with the alternate passing yards. So on DraftKings, the alternates you have, you can go from 175 plus up to 300 plus. If you're dealing with Daniel Jones here, I would say you're safer going with a 200 plus if you want to play the safe side. But I would be more inclined to go with Geno on this. If you're going with Geno, but if you go with Geno, you can't get into the positive unless you go to 275 plus. And I don't think he's doing that on the Giants' pass defense tonight. So here's what I'll say. We'll say 225 plus right now for Daniel Jones is a minus 145. We'll do that for the line in terms of the alternate passing yards. We'll do that. Minus 145. So I'm going to start stacking these bets in together if I can. So you guys get an odds appearance for this. So we're going to keep going. So 225, let's go back to the alternate spread. In the alternate spread, we said 5 for the Giants plus 5. Add that in. Now let's go look at the rushing and receiving props. We did our passing. I don't want to touch the touchdowns because touchdowns are tricky like that. They can easily run one in. So let's go back and take a look here at the rushing and receiving props. Daniel Jones over under 34.5 rushing yards. I don't know. I mean, they really don't want to run the ball, but Danny loves to run. And he'll probably get wrecked if he tries to run. I'm iffy on this one too. Kenny Walker over under 67.5. Well, let's see right now what Kenny is averaging. This is a big question. Remember, the Giants' run defense has not been good, it looks like. Yeah, the Giants have allowed 138 yards on the ground per game. Kenny right now is averaging per game, the only time he has gone over 67.5 was last week against Carolina. He really could have another good game where he can go over that. So if I'm doing this, I'm going over 67.5 on this. For Kenny Walker, over 67.5. You come back here, and let's see. We're not going to touch any of the other running backs. We'll go to receiving for this one. DK Metcalf. That is the question we've all been wondering. Or do you want? Or, you know what? Yeah, we're going to stick with the Seattle side because the Giants players you can't bet on. They're very tough to do. So we'll take a look here. Metcalf is averaging. He had his first 100-plus game last week against Carolina because Carolina's pass defense was not good. But against Detroit, he had 75, and against LA, he had 47. He is projected in this game to have 63.5 at the moment, so you got to go over under that. Will he be under 63.5 or will he be over 63.5? He's eclipsed that number twice this year already. He did against Detroit and he did against Carolina. Detroit's pass defense isn't the best. Carolina's not good. But the Rams were a little tough, and they struggled. The Giants' pass defense has been, I want to say, on the decent side at least. They allowed 227, which is way lower than a good amount of teams. So that means their pass defense will be solid. So we're just going to not touch unless we just go to alternate. Let's go to alternate receiving yards just to be safe. DK Metcalf. A 50-plus would be a minus 245. If you go 75-plus, it's 135-plus. All right, plus 135, you go over 75 or more yards. If you do 50-plus, we could do that. And we'll do one more. We're going to try for, let's see what we can do. Let's do receptions. Who's been getting the ball most on the Giants? That's what we're going to do. We're going to flip it now back to the Giants. See who's been getting the ball the most in terms of receptions, that you guys get a good parlay for this. This is my guess right now. Again, you don't have to take what I say to heart. This is the bet I'm coming up with, that I'm building. This is what I'm going to run tonight. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it. It doesn't mean it's going to win. It doesn't mean it's going to cash. But this is what I'm rolling with at the moment. Now we're going to roll in the last one. Receptions. We're going through the numbers. In terms of receptions, we're talking, let's go to the stats for catches. I want to look at catches for receiving. Receptions right now, the leading receiver in terms of receptions right now is Darren Waller. He's got 12 catches on the year through 3 games. It means he's getting 4 catches a game. His projection for this game is an over-under 4.5. They're trying to play flat. Isaiah Hodgins is also listed. He's got 5 catches in 3 games. They're asking if he's going to get over or under 2.5. They're trying to get you here. They're trying to play smart. I'm interested in this, actually. I don't know. Isaiah Hodgins, we just talked about. Darius Slayton's the next one. 9 catches in 3 games. Over under 3.5. Is he going to get more than that or less than that tonight? In terms of targets, that's what I'm also looking at. Who has been getting a lot of targets? Slayton has been getting a lot of targets behind Waller. Paris has gotten more catches than him, Paris Campbell. But I don't think he's getting about the same amount of targets as Slayton is. He's got 1 less, but he's catching more. So I'm going to go with probably Slayton here for catches. Actually, no, we got Breida too listed. Matt Breida in 3 games has 4 receptions on 4 targets, and he didn't gain any yards on any of those. He lost yards on overall. So if he gets them tonight, he's at an over under 2.5. To me, without Barkley though, that changes things. This is tough, man. This is a really tough one to bet. Let's take a look again at... Yeah, we'll go stick with Slayton here. 17 targets, but he's only caught 9 of them. And that's in 3 games. Is this the game where he gets more than 3 targets? And let's look at the history of games. Which games were it that he got his receptions? He got 3 in every game. Could he get less or more this time around? Another good question. Darren Waller's what we're going to look at now because Waller's listed. Waller, in those 3 games, he had 6 receptions in the Arizona game, who was not a good defense. But against the San Francisco and the Dallas defenses, which are very good, he caught 3 passes in each of those. So against the Seattle defense that isn't been doing great in the passing game, I would expect him to go over 4.5. But 4.5 is a lot. So you have to rely that he doesn't get just 4 catches. He goes for 5. If I'm thinking here, I've seen what he does. He did this against Arizona and against the Seattle pass defense. He's going to have to throw more to him. Man, it's tough. This is a really tough bet. I'm sorry, guys. I thought this would be easier, but it really isn't. We're going to take one last look at... We're going to look at Hodgins one last time and see if I can equate anything, kind of piece it together. Okay, here we go. Arizona defense was the easiest team he's played. And he got 4 catches, Slayton, on 5 targets. In the San Fran game, he was targeted once and didn't get it. So he had no catches. And against Dallas defense, they had 1 catch for 24 yards on 3 targets. And in this game, he's projected over under 2.5. Now, knowing the Seattle defense, would they allow more than 2.5 catches? My guess is yes. I think he goes over. Again, this is my guess. He's going over 2.5 tonight. So if you were to do this will... Now let's go over it again for the parlay. 5 picks. 5. Which means it's going to be risky. The more picks you put in, the riskier it gets. So if you're... Again, spend carefully. Do not go too crazy with the money here. I'm probably only going to put a couple bucks on this and see what happens. Here are the odds. For Daniel Jones' alternate passing yards, this is a review of our picks. 225 plus passing yards. The Giants plus 5 on an alternate spread. Over 67.5 rushing yards for Kenny Walker. 50 plus alternate receiving yards for DK Metcalf. And over 2.5 receptions for Isaiah Hodgins. That is where we're at. The odds total for this on this parlay is plus 1,300 without the boost. Because they really don't believe that Hodgins is going to go over 2.5. They really don't believe it. I think he will. And that'll be a big steal if that is the case. Now I'm opting in right now to tell you guys what the odds is with this boost at 50%. If you were to boost these odds with the DraftKings account, right? I'm sure some people here have DraftKings. This is what you are going to be dealing with. Let's try to fix this. Here we go. On here, the odds on this parlay. I'm trying my best to add the let's see. So if you were to do this right now with the Giants and put it into this parlay, the Giants would get... Apparently, the same game parlay is saying that you have to use dynamic, which is how they get you. So we're not going to do the dynamic because I'm not okay with that. So forget the profit boost. You have to use dynamic picks for that. I don't like dynamic picks. So here we go. If you accept the odd changes, $1 will win you 14 on the parlay. So bet 10, win 140. That's what you'll get. So again, this is the bet overall. If you do this parlay, once again, 225 plus passing yards alternate for Danny Jones. Giants plus 5 alternate spread. Over 67.5 rushing yards for Kenny Walker. 50 plus receiving yards alternate for DK Metcalf. And over 2.5 receptions for Isaiah Hodgins. Those 5 picks are going to go out to a plus 1,300 on DraftKings. Maybe different on your other apps, whatever you use. Where if you place 10, you win 140. So do what you have to do. Be smart about it. I'm going to place 5 and call it a day. And it's in. My ticket is booked. So, in terms of who wins the game now, I'm taking the Giants barely. I think they're barely going to win this. So they're going to need to fight and win to stay alive. This would be the game the way they do that. I'm taking the Giants to win. Again, I'm not betting the money line because that's every time you bet money line, it comes back to bite you. So I don't touch it. But I do think the Giants will find a way to squeeze it. And if they don't win it, it's going to be super close within that 5 frame that we're betting on. And that is the Seahawks-Giants breakdown along with the betting odds. Again, if you are 21 and over, please bet responsibly. I am not responsible for whatever you bet and whatever comes out of it at all. I'm not responsible. This is just what I'm going to do, and I'm not the best with betting. This is where I'm going to just put out and just see what happens. It's a flyer to me. It's a flyer. Just see what happens. But again, that is the final segment of the show, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am going to be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., another episode of the show. But I'm also here tonight for Monday Night Football. We're going to do Seahawks-Giants tonight for Monday Night Football. I will be live on Twitch again to do this. But until then, have a great day. We'll see y'all again tonight. And don't forget, tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., another episode of the Brian Mansell Show. Thank you for everything, everybody. Have a good day. We'll see you tonight. Peace.